wasn't always a believer, I used to hate God. Well, I was homeless for, off and on for almost 10 years. Addict, alcoholic. Grew up very, very poor. Grew up very, very against the law, legal way. And about 6 years ago, I had a power encounter with Jesus, and it changed my life. And now I'm able to, through my testimony and through the power of Jesus, help to give hope and encouragement and life to people that have been in my situation and are in my situation.
Outstanding. And where and how are you doing that right now?
Okay, well, I have a walking ministry where I just walk these streets in the city, and sometimes I'm praying with people, sometimes getting them into rehab, sometimes hugging on them, listening to them. God has also opened up a door where once a week, me and a couple others take a Bible study into one of the local rehabs here. And then God joined me and Brenda Spencer Ragland here a couple of years back with her Embrace Hope and what she does with the homeless, to not only help house them and build them up in the Lord and in the community, but to also try to be a light and example to them of overcoming the next hardship that comes with just growing out of it.
Helping build that resilience.
Yes.
So tell us, kind of starting with your story, exactly when, where, and how did you end up finding yourself in these hardships and in this darkness?
Well, literally I was born into it. What I mean when I say that, I was born in my mother and stepdad. We had moved over 60 times by the time I was 16. A lot of that time homeless, in the sense of either living with somebody or in hotels, sometimes in the vehicle, which ended up learning later in life he was running from the law. And so that was a big part of it. So it was what I knew. Change was the security for me. You know, and if something got too comfortable, that wasn't good.
Exactly.
And then in my later teenage years, I ended up in drugs and alcohol. A lot of it was to hide and push back all of the trauma and abuse and different things that had happened throughout my life as a child. And that led to 20-something years of using and running and hiding in that drug and alcohol, which ended up in the streets for about half of that time.
So that you saying half that time, that's about 10 years.
Yes.
That you were also not only involved in various substance abuse and various other darkness, but you were also homeless on the street.
Yes, I was.
That's extremely tough. What other kind of extreme challenges or difficulties or hardships did you end up facing?
There's a lot of legal issues that come with it.
Run-ins with the law?
Yes, absolutely. All my fault, without a doubt. But there wasn't a lot of, and even if there was places to turn to, I wouldn't. It was getting right was a scary thing. And what I mean by that is, it was anytime I did have work or got a place, or let's just say a hotel room, and stuff started getting comfortable, I would run from it because I knew it was just something else I was going to mess up, something else I was going to lose, someone else I was going to lose. And so it was easier to push it away and stay just myself out and about than it was to be vulnerable and try to push forward.
You told me outside that you used to hate God.
I did. I hated him. I said I didn't believe in him, but I've obviously believed in him enough to hate him. I blamed everything on him. I remember at one point in my life, when different at different times in my life, question would come up: "Are you going to heaven or hell?" And mine would, "I'm going to hell, but I just want 5 minutes with him so I can tell him what I think." It was the darkness I was in. It was the lie and suppression that I was in, or oppression, I guess I should say, that I was in, that I didn't know that I was in at the time. I didn't know the power of God. I didn't know the power of Jesus, but I knew enough about it to know that it obviously wasn't for me, or I wouldn't be in the position that I've been in my entire life, and that I had a hate for him.
Well, you were born in this situation pretty much though. So you grew up and this is all you pretty much knew. So this was your habitus, your ideological norm and what you were used to. So how did you get out and break out of that hardship? How did the power of Jesus Christ help you overcome all that adversity and all those obstacles?
Sure. So in 2018, so 7 years ago, my dad was murdered, and at that time I was still 20-something years, you know, in alcoholic homelessness, and I was living in a different state when it happened. And when it happened, it was an open investigation, and so I stayed where I was at for about 3 months, and it just ate on me. So I decided to move back, and I went on this 8-9 month rampage, and I was about 10 days into this rehab, which is not enough time to be rehabilitated. And I was standing beside my bunk one evening, and I just started yelling out to God, if you are real, show up right now. If you are really who you say you are, and really who everyone says you are, show up, because you know what I'm fixing to do. I remember yelling to him, you know, I hate everything. I hate about this life, this murder, the drugs, the alcohol, the homelessness, just everything about it. I hated about this world and the way that I was in it. And as I was yelling these words, as fast as a lightning bolt, he just flew through me from head to toe, inside and out, with a peace and a love and a joy that I never knew existed. And I just immediately knew it was Jesus. There was no doubt in me it was Jesus. And the first thing that he said to me was, I want you to forgive your brother. That same night, at that same time. And I said, I cannot do that. You know, I'm still talking out loud to him. You know, I cannot do that. I can do this love feeling and this joy feeling and this peace feeling, but I cannot forgive him for this. And he told me, he said, what makes you think you're any more worthy of my forgiveness than him? You're a murderer. You had it in your heart. Now, I didn't know the Bible. I knew bumper sticker slogans, but I didn't know the Bible. But I know that the conviction and the hurt that I felt of him telling me that was just as bad, in a sense, as the murder of my dad. Well, a few guys that were in the program with me, a little bit ahead of me, had started a little prayer circle at night. Every night before lights out, they'd stand in a little circle, each say a prayer, and go to sleep. God said, I want you to go forgive him in that prayer circle tonight. And I wasn't going to do it, but when the circle came around, I just walked to it, and when it came to my turn, I was crying and spitting out the words that said, God forgive him, I forgive him. But I remember thinking at the same time, I don't mean this. Why am I saying this? Like, I couldn't figure it out. The next day come around, and all he said to me was, go do it again. So again, I went to it, and when it came to my turn, crying, spitting out the words, God forgive him, I forgive him. But again, not meaning it. And wrestling in my mind, why am I saying this? Why am I even doing this? The third day come around, and not only was I in that prayer circle saying it, but I truly meant it and wanted that forgiveness and that love and that peace that was for him and for everyone I'd ever come into contact, that was just being poured into me from the Lord. And right away, God told me, he said, I want you to graduate out. I want you to stay in this town. Your work is here. And he told me that, he showed me how in my darkness, all those years of sin and darkness and coming into agreement with Satan and not even knowing that's what I was doing, and then coming into that agreement of this murder, these revenge and suicide, how I had come up with a plan with him of destruction and murder in the name of my dad. But that day, when I surrendered it all, just yelled to him and gave it to him, and asked him into my life, he took it and he molded it into a walk and a testimony in the name of our Father. And I graduated out, and I've been here ever since. It's been about almost 6 years now.
Dang, Brother Jonathan, I'm kind of a little bit messed up hearing the power of your story. It's a really powerful story. And you know me, I've been, you don't know me very well, but we were talking earlier, and in the Marines, I was a cop for a while. I ran into people like you all the time, and I know they used to tell me when they'd see the cop, the skull and crossbones, like fight or flight, and you told me earlier, no, it's always a fight.
Sure.
There was always other people out of the darkness that you were suffering in. As you were trying to get out, some of that darkness is also inflicted on you by the not necessarily intentionally dark forces, but you considered it a darkness of the other people trying to help you that really didn't realize that they were not helping you really, or not helping you for the right reasons or whatever. So from segueing from all of that testimony you just delivered for us, what is your way ahead? What is your path forward, and to keep moving in a positive direction? And what are your final thoughts and messages for anybody else out there who's going through this darkness, who's struggling through these types of hardships? Because these are, most people don't know it, but these are incredibly challenging, like almost impossible
Yes,
things to get out of.
it is.
How would you recommend, what are your methods forward, and what are your messages for those people?
Sure. Well, it's two messages really for the people that are still struggling in it and still in that darkness, and for the people who aren't, but are maybe family members or just people, people that aren't in it, whether it be government or hospitals or people of help. We have to remember that this is an evil spiritual battle, and it is death. It leads to death, and the only way to overcome it is through Jesus, the absolute only way. And so, moving forward in that, and I'm still going to speak to both people as I'm saying this, both sides, if you will, to the ones that are still trapped in it. That Jesus is the way. Surrendering it and being vulnerable enough to surrender to Him, but also vulnerable enough to surrender to the people that He's sending to help. There's a lot of distrust, no trust at all. We trust nobody when we're in it, not even ourselves. And so to try to force a trust on someone in one way or another, whether it's out of the best thought of your hearts or not, doesn't work, because the trust isn't there. The trust has to be built. And that true type of trust and peace, is another word in there, only comes from Jesus. And to the people who are suffering because of it, whether it be family members or people in the community or government or whoever it may be, if you're not coming at this through prayer and through the movement of Jesus and the Holy Spirit, you're fighting a battle that will not be won. It just absolutely will not be won. I'm not trying to put blame on someone else for someone doing drugs, but the blame is there if you're approaching it any other way. The blame on you, and if you haven't come to the Lord, come to the Lord, because that's what we got to understand too, is that just because you might be homeless or in drugs or alcohol doesn't make you any different if you're in a home or in an office or in whatever position, if you do not have the Lord as well. It's two evils actually working together to keep both of you oppressed in whatever darkness that is. And so to believers, that do follow Christ, it's prayer. It's not they'll do it when they're ready. They'll make the choice when they're ready. That part is actually none of your business. Your business is prayer and being moved by the Lord. And there is that hope in it. Not only do I believe it from this Bible, believe it from my own testimony, but I believe it and see it every day in people that are seeking Him and people that are delivering Him in His works and what He is and what He does. But any other way will not work. If it would have worked by now. And that's, drugs, alcohol, and homelessness is loud, and it's in our face, and it's obvious. And there's a lot of things that need to be done, but the crime needs to stop in it, without a doubt. It's not to say I do this because I'm in a dark spiritual battle. It's the reason why, but it does have to. So submit to the authority, submit to the rules, submit to the law. It's a very hard thing to do, but understand when those laws or rules or authority is coming, whether it be police officer or government or just a person who is in authority telling you to stop. It's submitting both. But if we're not coming at it with the love of Christ and by the move of the Holy Spirit, it will not happen. It absolutely will not happen. It will continue. We might shed one thing. We might shed the drink. We might shed the drug. We might even move into a home. But without the Lord, we are still spiritually homeless. And someone who is already spiritually homeless, living in a house or having all the money in the world or all the authority, cannot do anything. There's no amount of money that can fix it. There's no amount of money that can fix it. There's no amount of rules that can fix it. And so to tie it in with the Homeland Security part, is that what you said earlier, correct?
Correct.
the battle from outside of it, the battle from not in the drugs and alcohol, but battling it, actually makes the homeland more insecure without bringing the Lord into it, without a doubt, 100%. And so I pray for anyone watching that if you don't have Jesus in your heart, I pray that he comes into it and that you will surrender, whether you're on the streets or in the home. That's the only meeting ground for any of these problems at all. And, is recognizing the darkness that you're in. If you don't have Jesus, you're in darkness, I promise you. Regardless of what you have around you that might say differently. And taking that step back and those judgments back and those opinions back on both sides of it, and just realize this is a hard fight out here for anybody. Just living life itself. Life be lifing sometimes, constantly. But the meeting ground is Jesus. And that's where the healing starts. That's where the darkness starts to fade out, because it cannot be there with the light.
Outstanding.
Lord, do I say anything to her? Do I say anything at all? And he might just say, hug her. He might just say, listen to her. And or he might say, hey, she needs some prayer, and right now is the time for her to receive it. And so it's fine. It's first of all being connected in that timing of the Holy Spirit, but then it's also listening, because someone will tell you, everyone will tell you exactly what they're needing or wanting if you'll just listen, if you'll just pay attention. If you'll just take the time to pay the attention, they'll tell you 1,000 other things, but there will be that one.
Yeah.
And and I know that's a very vague answer to that question, but there's always that one thing, and that's what you start to build on, is that one thing. Because in this darkness, like I said a minute ago, it is everywhere. And so in this walking ministry, let's just use it for example, I'm not just encountering homeless or addicts or alcoholics, I'm also encountering business owners, I'm encountering believers, I'm encountering pastors, just in my walk.
Mm-hmm.
And every one of them can connect in some darkness. And it's taking that darkness and connecting it to the light. Does that make any sense? Does that help at all? I mean, it's so...
So you're literally, what you do now is you're literally walking around town and just connecting with people, talking to people,
as he says,
and doing what you can do.
Yeah, or actually just doing sometimes it's just walking by and pray for them as you're walking. Sometimes I don't encounter anybody and I'm just talking with him. So it's me not doing anything other than just walking, and him working through as and when it seems needed. Sometimes just walking by someone with a Bible. Who knows what that does for someone? I don't know.
Right.
But so it's me not trying to have a plan other than just being obedient. And that's so vague but so exact in the same time.
Yeah.
My plan might work for 1 out of 1,000,000, but there's still all those other numbers that were left behind because I made the plan.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense at all? So it's just really, and sometimes a lot of it you never know what has happened, but you left them with a little bit of Jesus, a little bit of love, and a little bit of hope. Whether it's, hey, nice pair of shoes. Let me give you another example that just came to my mind. So one day God told me to go for a walk, but he told me to grab 2 bottles of water and 2 apples. And it was a cooler time of the year, so I was wearing a hoodie. So I'm like, all right. So I put them in my hoodie pocket. Got about 5 blocks to the house, and I encountered a guy who I can't think of his name now, but I'd ran into quite often and started to build a relationship with. He was with a woman. They were sitting on a sidewalk. God said, give them the water and the apple. So I'm like, here you guys go. And she looked at me and she said, thank you, I'm hungry, and I haven't got to brush my teeth in months. The apple was the way she was brushing her teeth that day. But also the obedience and the sensitivity to the Holy Spirit 5 blocks earlier before I left my house gave a connection right there. Not only did he give her food and water, a way to brush her teeth, but we were able to connect. So we were sitting there and talked for about 20, 30, I don't even remember about what, prayed a little and went on. And I haven't seen them since, but I know that when they got up and left, or I got up and left, however it happened, that I left a little bit of Jesus with them. And so it's also the understanding that it's not in my power, not in my thought, not in my plan, but it's his.
Do you tell people things like that? That like would you say to them, you know what? Before I left my house today, God told me to bring these.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you said.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
As soon that was part, and now thank you for saying it, because that was part of the conversation afterwards. but that way all the glory is going to
Right.
him. And that way, whether they believe in him or not, or they're struggling with him, or they're mad at him, or whatever, they know. And then also they know it wasn't me,
Yeah.
because it wasn't me.
Right.
And so that's another way for the relationship that we're building together, but also building the relationship with him and that person.
Because it just makes me wonder how many of the people you encounter are people who did like you did that are saying, I'm desperate, just I need a sign today. And then here you
Sure,
are.
absolutely. And I
It's
wanted to
neat.
hit on something else. I told you earlier that I just, growing up, or at different times, someone would say you go into heaven or hell, and I'd say I'm hell, but I just want 5 minutes with him. I forgot to say this, but when I was crying out to him, I got my 5 minutes, and all he said to me was, "Come here, you need a hug. It's been a long journey." And I've never had my heart hugged like that before in my life. And so there's that. And also, I know that you were asking a minute ago about why it's so important to be moved by the Lord and doing this in the name of the Lord is because if not, homeless addicts will devour you if you're coming at them with any other intention. And what I mean by that is, if you're coming at them with because your organization or your government or your group or just yourself it's a financing thing or a power thing, that's a demon in darkness that is motivating you to come and devour, and you're going to be devoured right back. It's so simple if we actually just take a step back and use the KISS method, to keep it simple, stupid. If you're coming to devour, you're going to get devoured. If you're coming in the name of the Lord and by the movement of the Holy Spirit, then even if you do get devoured, you're getting devoured by the Lord. What does that look like? That looks great. That's where we rejoice. But you cannot blame someone for reacting physically or negatively or any type of way of like that when that was your intention or mindset to begin with. Especially the power struggle or the money struggle, or I don't want to say the struggle, the chasing the money or the chasing the power with it. It's just two evils joining hands, watching you devour each other.
What question did you have for him, Brenda, to talk about what it's like to?
What it's like living on the streets, being homeless for that time.
It's terrible. You want like some exacts? I mean, there was many nights I was in the winter covered up with a tarp. Many nights laying under a car so I wouldn't be seen by headlights, or that could potentially be police or the homeowners or the business owner, wherever I might be hiding out at. Every day was survival, to find something to eat or to find the next drug or drink, whatever I might have been chasing that day. Absolute no trust around. What I mean by that is in the other homeless or addicts that are out there, because they're in that same survival and that same darkness mode. So it's each person for themselves, every man for themselves, and no matter what that takes to, you're not thinking about tomorrow. You're thinking about surviving right then in the only ways that you know how. There's a lot of theft to survive. It's cold, it's lonely. It's as far as you could literally hold yourself on one foot off the top of a cliff without completely falling off. Even if there's people with their hands out trying to pull you back in, because it's survival, and I don't trust you. Why would I? In that mindset anyways, why would I? And so it's as near to death as you can be without actually being dead. But at the same time, in the darkness of it, it's the most secure place, because you have nothing around you. You're keeping everything away, so you cannot get hurt, or you can't hurt. You're pushing away. So it's a trickery. I don't know a better word to say in it. Or a deception that Satan plays on us, and that darkness plays on us. The farther I can keep you away, but close enough to survive off of you.
So it's like that Metallica song, the less I have, the more I gain. Rover, wanderer, nomad,
Yes.
vagabond, call me what you will.
Yes, absolutely, without a doubt. It hurts to hurt.
Yeah.
And so if I don't put myself in a position to be hurt or to hurt someone else, there's a little less hurt in my life. It's It's more than just stop drinking. It's more than just stop using. It's more than just take this house because here it is for you, or take this because here it is for you. It's so much more than that. Those are just little, as lightly as I can say, it's little leaves on top of roots that need to be pulled out, and pulled out gently and healed, that only the Lord can do, and do through people that are trusting in Him to do it. Any other way, it does not work. If it does, show me how and where that's working.
So what you just said kind of in a way explains why, you hear in the arguments of homelessness, some people say, well, they want to be homeless. They have places they can go to, but they want to be. And
It's
in
like
a
a
way, that kind
lifestyle.
of explains it because, you said it's that distrust of other people. If they're homeless and on their own, you're away from me.
Why should I trust you just because you're saying here's a bed?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, honestly, why should I?
Yeah.
I mean, now, in this position I'm in now with the Lord, and overcoming that, and have overcome that, I can look at it differently. But until you show me why I should trust you in any way whatsoever, till you bring me an apple every day so I can brush my teeth and I know I can trust that, and that's built on, why would I trust because you have a bed, or why would I trust because you have a program, or anything? Why? I mean, it makes no sense. Why would I trust that you say because it's better for you? Well, how do you know what's better for me if all you know is my drug use or my alcohol use or where I live? How do you know what's better for me? How do you know what needs to be fixed or healed or built up in me? You have no idea. You can be in a home and be spiritually homeless. In fact, there's more spiritually homeless people living in houses in this city right here than there are on the streets.
So from a constructivist viewpoint, and what we mean by that is we're saying this theory, we look at cultural norms and ideologies and things in our society that are going on. And the Homeland Security part of it is that law enforcement wants to help, but law enforcement is an enforcement arm or apparatus. So they're there almost for assertive, if not aggressive, enforcement. Sure. To try to alleviate or fix this issue. But from that societal and cultural mindset to try to, for law enforcement type of personnel to understand, talk about the dark times when you're talking about the roots of your family being so entrenched in the criminality that your father ended up getting slain.
So what's the question? Ask the question again, I'm sorry.
Talk about that darkness. Talk about that cultural setting. So, because most people have no clue how this world is. Right. in that type of setting. And this setting is that in your scenario, you were born and raised in this sliver of the culture and society where your father ends up getting killed.
First of all, I have all appreciation for police and authority now. Do not get me wrong. But in that mindset, and I'm going to hit a little bit on what you said to me, on that mindset is, even as children growing up in that type of environment, police are the enemy because they make daddy go away, or mommy go away, or brother go away. Okay, so it's just not the particular person; it's just the badge itself, which leads to more. So now I'm growing up with a hate for you, regardless of who you are, if you got that badge on, right?
Yeah.
And I'm growing up following in the footsteps of where I'm at. So it's a generationally built in. I think that crime should not be excused in it, and the law is the law, and the Bible tells us to obey the authorities and actually pray for them. And so we need discipline, without a doubt. But it's also what would be great, in a perfect world, is that person arrested for whatever crime, it's drug related or alcohol related or whatever it may be, and then somehow finding the root. Because just arresting and putting in jail, they just most of the time come out. Most of the time, I have many family members that did worse than they were, if that's even possible, smarter than they were, to commit more, and with a more of a grudge and hate towards. And again, it's the police officer and the system doing its job. Don't get me wrong, but there are flaws in the system when it comes to those roots. If there is something set up where the root could be taken care of, where something in there could be taken care of, then that would drop way down the crime rate, the actual person going back into a crime, without a doubt, 100% it would drop. But just the way it's set up now, it can't. It just adds to it most of the time. I can't speak for everyone who's went through. I can't say everyone who comes back out is still a criminal and doing it, but a majority, especially where I grew up in, the ring I grew up in, and so it's there has to be another entity in there that is bringing through Christ some sort of, okay, we know you do drugs, we know you do alcohol. Someone asking questions, why, or this or that, and getting to what is really there. Anybody can quit doing drugs and anybody can quit drinking. You see it all the time. That does not mean that person is better. In our eyesight, they may be better. They're not causing that type of havoc that they were anymore. The person is not better, and that person's family is not better. Satan came to kill, steal, and destroy, and he's going to steal and separate and divide flesh to flesh as much as possible, whether it be a drug user to a police officer. That's flesh to flesh. Let's put a divide. Let's put a hate. Let's put a judgment. Both toward each other, or one toward the other, or however it works. And the child growing up in it, the family growing up in it and seeing it, what else would they think when all they know is dad just went to prison? I don't get to see dad anymore. Dad's in jail. Or dad got a ticket that's $300 and now we can't pay the rent, and so now we're on the street. And so there's so much. And again, this isn't a blame towards the law. There's just there's a flaw in there, and that flaw is not Christ. That's where the flaw is, the lack of Christ. I'm not saying there aren't police officers and so many through law that are believers. There's plenty that are believers. But like you said, the entity itself is structured in a certain way, and that's what has to be done. We have to infiltrate in all areas, not just the addict or the homeless or the person has to be infiltrated with the Lord. These entities do as well.
So it's systemic. This root goes so deep, no matter how much the government with law enforcement tries to intervene, and no matter how much of a holistic 360-degree comprehensive thing they try to do with some drug demand reduction type programs here, like Drug Abuse Resistance Education DARE, the Gang Resistance Education and Training, the community-oriented police trying to be the nice guys. And even though other slivers of the society can help with the homeless shelters and the soup kitchen and this and that and the other, there is still this issue, and part of that issue is there's an appetite because there's that product out there, whatever, and that product is facilitated in no small way by Satan or a satanic
Absolutely.
type of force. And this core issue can't be addressed through this until these people within the core get to the source of the light, which is Christ.
Absolutely. Coming out of it and taking care of it,
Yeah.
or being used to take care of it, without a doubt. I mean, well, I'll say it again, if it would work, it would have already.
Right.
I mean, the proof is, look around.
So we can't blow up all the coca farms in Colombia or wherever else.
No,
we
absolutely
can't
not.
take care of all the poppy
Absolutely not.
farms out in Afghanistan. There's always going to be a way, and even if it isn't this substance that people are abusing this time, it's going to transmogrify into fentanyl. Once we take care of fentanyl, some sort of chemicals that are going into fentanyl, it's going to change into something else. It's always going to change, because that Satan needs that perpetual division, that flesh on flesh, divide and conquer, and pitting enmity with people and everything.
When you bring it to that bigger scale like that, you're talking about a different time. You're talking about power and money.
Right.
That's power and the money of the people dealing or selling. That's power and the money of the people trying to facilitate in a different way to take care of it. We all those things you mentioned a minute ago, there are people that do come out of it through, like, the different dares or whatever that do. But what we end up doing unfortunately, is we ride on the coattails of a few good success stories, but we're blinding or just not showing all the 90 other 8% that is not affecting positively.
Right.
Why? Because of money and power. It's very simple. It's the same on both sides.
Right.
In that bigger scale.
So part of that money and power too is on the flip side of the coin. On the government side, they have the prison industrial complex,
Yes.
and they have this law enforcement that has this huge budget. Most of the police officers don't know of a better, more proactive and productive way of doing it. They're only trained through the law enforcement aspect, and a crime is broken, make an arrest. Somebody's homeless or drunk, send them to the homeless shelter or the drunk tank. And we have on that side, because the money is there, that sort of self-perpetuates itself.
Absolutely. Pay me $100,000 a year and I'll house 5 people.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, take them off drugs and put them on a multi-million-dollar legal drug.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, so when I say the money and power, I mean it on both ends. There's no difference. One looks worse, but one's out in your face and not as hidden.
Right.
And that's just, it's not a blame, it's not a point, it's not even a person that I'm talking about. It's the evil domain over. It's very simple.
It's almost like a satanic karma nature of the human spirit.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Without Christ, we will devour each other as we're being devoured. Alcohol, drug, prescriptions, power, money, name, position.
Gambling.
Yes, wherever it is, it doesn't matter from me on the sidewalk to whoever at the time was the president of the United States. Without Christ, we are caught up in one of those.
Yep.
Power, money, drug, alcohol, name, all of it from the top to the bottom, and there's no change now. It's the same without Christ.